The apartment begins with a man who has figured out how to survive inside a giant corporation by making himself useful in the most humiliating way possible. Calvin Clifford Baxter is not rich, powerful, or especially important. He's one more face in a sea of office workers pouring into a huge insurance company in New York. But he has one thing a handful of ambitious executives desperately need. He has an apartment of his own. That small advantage turns his home into borrowed territory, his private life into a bargaining chip, and his loneliness into something he tries to laugh off. Then he falls in love with the one woman who can make all those compromises impossible to ignore. Baxter works in a massive office where everybody looks tiny beneath rows of desks that seem to stretch forever. He is good at his job, polite to everyone, and almost completely invisible. The men above him barely know his name unless they need a favor. That favor is the apartment. Several married executives use Baxter as place for affairs, and in return they praise him, protect him, and help him inch upward in the company. It is a miserable system dressed up as opportunity. Baxter loses sleep, catches cold waiting outside in the winter, and eats alone in diners because strangers are in his own bed. But he tells himself this is temporary. He tells himself it is the price of advancement. The one bright part of his workday is Fran Kubelik, the elevator operator. Fran is charming, funny, and sad in a way Baxter cannot fully read at first. She moves through the office with a smile that feels practiced, as if she learned long ago how to look light while carrying something heavy. Baxter adores her from a distance. He times conversations with her, searches for excuses to be near her, and quietly imagines that maybe one day he will ask her out and she will say yes. For a while he believes that future might really happen, then the next level of his compromise arrives. The man who notices Baxter most is Jeff D. Sheldrake, the personnel director. Sheldrake is smooth, important, and completely at ease with his own selfishness. Unlike the other executives, he does not just want the apartment occasionally. He wants priority access. He understands exactly how badly Baxter wants promotion, and he uses that hunger with perfect calm. Baxter, desperate to move up, agrees. This new arrangement brings him what he thinks he has been working toward. He gets a bigger office and a better title. People suddenly see him differently. Men who ignored him now nod with respect. But every step up ties him more tightly to Sheldrake, and Sheldrake is worse than the rest because he asks for everything while pretending it is nothing. At the same time, Baxter keeps trying to get closer to Fran. He invites her out, talks to her when he can, and tries to work up the courage to believe she might actually notice him. What he does not know is that Fran is already caught in a different orbit. She is having an affair with Sheldrake, and she has been persuaded, like other women before her, to believe he will eventually leave his wife. The truth reaches Baxter slowly and painfully. At first he only senses there is a mystery around Sheldrake's use of the apartment, then small details begin to line up. A woman's item left behind, a familiar voice over the phone, a broken hand mirror that Baxter recognizes. Piece by piece he realizes that the woman he has been lending his apartment to without knowing it is Fran. That realization changes everything. Up to that point, Baxter has been able to tell himself the apartment scheme is dirty but distant. It involves anonymous people and professional compromise. Once Fran is part of it, the whole thing becomes personal. Suddenly, the woman he has been longing for is walking into the same rooms where he has been trading away his dignity, and the man using her is the same man using him. Even after learning the truth, Baxter cannot bring himself to fully step away. Part of that is fear. Sheldrake has the power to destroy the promotion he just gave him. Part of it is heartbreak. Baxter still loves Fran, and his love makes him weak in the worst possible way. He keeps hoping things will somehow sort themselves out, even though he can see they are only getting darker. The pressure builds toward Christmas. At the office holiday party, everything that has been hidden starts flashing in public under cheap decorations and too much alcohol. Miss Olson, one of Sheldrake's former mistresses, gets drunk and bitter enough to say aloud what the women around him all eventually learn. Sheldrake is a man who repeats the same promises to different women and walks away before any promise costs him something real. Fran hears enough to understand that she is not the exception she imagined herself to be. Even then, she still wants to believe him. That is what makes the next part so sad. Fran is not foolish in some simple way. She is lonely, hopeful, and exhausted from wanting something better than the life she has. Sheldrake knows exactly how to keep that hope alive without ever truly giving her what she wants. On Christmas Eve, he meets her at Baxter's apartment and tells her what she most needs to hear. He says enough to keep her hanging on, then leaves her alone with the truth hidden underneath. He is not going to risk his position, his marriage, or his comfort for her. The moment he walks out, Fran finally sees the shape of the trap she has been living in. Baxter returns later that night expecting nothing more than another inconvenience. Instead, he finds Fran unconscious in his bed after taking a bottle of sleeping pills. This is the moment when the film stops being just witty and turns genuinely painful. Baxter could panic, protect himself, or call the police and distance his name from the whole disaster. Instead, he acts. He gets his neighbor Dr. Dreyfus, helps revive Fran, and then spends the next days caring for her in secret while the world outside goes on as normal. Dr. Dreyfus becomes one of the film's quiet moral voices. From his point of view, Baxter looks like a selfish playboy who drove a woman to desperation and now has to live with the consequences. He scolds him sharply and tells him to become a decent human being. What makes these scenes so strong is that Baxter accepts the judgment without defending himself. He knows the situation is more complicated, but he also knows he has been living in ways that deserve contempt. Even if Fran is not his victim in the direct way Dreyfus assumes, Baxter has still been helping build the machinery that hurt her. While Fran recovers in the apartment, the relationship between her and Baxter finally becomes real. Away from the office, away from the elevator, away from Sheldrake's lies, they begin seeing each other as people instead of roles. Baxter is gentle with her. He makes sure she eats, keeps her company, and tries to make her laugh without asking for anything. Fran, still weak and ashamed, gradually relaxes around him. She sees how lonely he is, how hard he works to be kind, and how much sadness he hides beneath all his neat little routines. They play cards, they watch television, they talk in sideways ways that reveal more than direct confession ever could. For Baxter, these days are both joyful and painful. Fran is finally near him, finally sharing space with him honestly, but only because another man broke her heart. He knows he cannot force the story to turn into a romance just because he wants it to. So he waits and cares for her, which is the first truly selfless thing he has done in a long time. Eventually, Fran returns to work and the old world starts pressing in again. Sheldrake learns what happened and realizes Baxter now knows everything. Even then, he is not embarrassed. He is only inconvenienced. He keeps using charm and authority as if they were enough to smooth over any moral stain. Because his wife has finally left him after hearing about his affairs, he now feels free to offer Fran what sounds like the fulfillment of his promises. But by this point, it is clear that whatever he offers will still be built around himself first. At the office, Baxter receives another reward, this time an even bigger promotion. Sheldrake wants him close, loyal, and silent. Baxter takes the new title, but he is changing inside. Dr. Dreyfus's harsh judgment stays with him. Fran's presence stays with him. The old joke he has been living, that a man can trade away pieces of himself and still remain untouched, no longer works. The turning point comes on New Year's Eve. Sheldrake asks for the apartment again, assuming Baxter will hand over the key as he always has. This time Baxter finally says no. It is a simple action, but inside the logic of the movie it is enormous. He is not just refusing a favor, he is refusing the entire system that made him successful. He tells Sheldrake exactly what kind of man he thinks he is, gives up the promotion, and walks away from the company instead of letting himself be used any longer. That decision costs him the future he thought he wanted, but it gives him something far more important. It gives him back his self-respect. Meanwhile, Fran has spent the evening with Sheldrake and finally understands that even after everything, he still has not changed. He is still bargaining, still demanding, still putting his own comfort at the center of every promise. She sees at last that what she kept calling love was only a prolonged humiliation. Then she hears that Baxter has quit. That news cuts through everything. She realizes that the one man who had every reason to protect himself chose instead to act with decency. Baxter, the quiet man everyone overlooked, has done something Sheldrake never could. He has risked comfort for principle. He has chosen not to be small anymore. So Fran runs. She leaves the party, leaves Sheldrake, and races through the city to Baxter's apartment. Baxter is there packing, unsure what comes next now that he has thrown away the career ladder he spent years climbing. When Fran bursts in, the movie finally lets hope into the room. They do not need grand speeches because everything important has already been proven in action. She is there, he is there. For the first time, neither of them is pretending. He tells her he is leaving. She sits down at the card table and tells him to stop talking and start dealing. It is playful, intimate, and perfect because it belongs only to them. Not a fantasy ending, not a dramatic embrace under fireworks, just two wounded people choosing to stay in the room with each other and begin again honestly. The apartment works because it understands how loneliness can make compromise feel normal. Baxter tells himself for most of the story that he's just being practical. Fran tells herself that Sheldrake will eventually choose her. Both are living on rationalizations that help them survive but also keep them trapped. The film strips those excuses away one by one until both characters are forced to decide what they are worth. It is also a story about decency in a world that rewards the opposite. The men above Baxter are polished, successful, and completely hollow. They use women, use each other, and call it business. Baxter starts the movie helping them because he thinks success is worth the damage. By the end, he learns that success without self-respect is only another form of failure. So the apartment ends with a man who gives up the job he thought he wanted, and a woman who finally walks away from the man who kept breaking her heart. Their future is uncertain, but that uncertainty feels clean compared with the lies they were living before. Out of all the borrowed nights, broken promises, and office games, something real survives, and that is what makes the ending feel earned.